Some stories don't start with fireworks. They start with silence. With rain falling gently on city sidewalks. With a little boy in a wheelchair, trying to lift a spoon to his mouth, and failing. And with a woman most people wouldn't notice, who noticed everything. Anna Sullivan didn't have much. Not wealth. Not power. Not the kind of name that opened doors. But what she did have was harder to find. Patience. Presence. The kind of care that can't be taught, only lived. That night, as she quietly helped a boy she'd never met, something extraordinary happened. His father, a powerful, distant man named Caio Montero, stood frozen outside the diner's glass door. Watching a stranger do for his son what he hadn't done in far too long. Make him feel seen. Make him feel safe. He came in expecting nothing, but walked out forever changed. Because that moment wasn't just an act of kindness. It was a spark. The beginning of a story about what happens when compassion meets privilege. When lived experience confronts power. And when one black woman, used to being overlooked, refuses to stay invisible any longer. It was one of those nights when the city seemed to carry its own sadness on its shoulders. The rain fell light but steady, painting the sidewalks with trembling reflections under the weak glow of the streetlights. Inside a nearly empty diner, Anna wiped down the counter for the third time, even though it was already clean. Sometimes, cleaning was just a way to silence thoughts that refused to stay quiet. Her apron was stained with coffee. Her feet ached. But her gaze remained sharp. Anna had learned early on that, for a black woman like her, kindness wasn't a luxury, it was resistance. That's when she saw him. Sitting in a corner booth, a small boy struggled to lift a spoon to his mouth. His movements were slow, uncoordinated. He looked about 8, maybe 9. The wheelchair he sat in seemed too big for him, like the world still hadn't figured out how to make space for his existence. Beside him, no adult. Just a half-empty glass of juice, a powered-off tablet, and a crumpled napkin. Anna glanced around. The woman who had come in with him, elegant, white, blonde, heels clicking, stood outside on her phone, lost in some drama that clearly had nothing to do with the boy. Anna didn't hesitate. She grabbed a clean towel, filled a glass with water, and approached him with the careful grace of someone who knew that rushing never made anyone feel safe. "Hey, champ, hungry?" The boy looked up. There was a silence in his eyes. Not from shyness, but from a life of being overlooked. "I'm trying," he mumbled, almost apologizing for his struggle. Anna smiled. "How about we try together?" She sat down beside him without ceremony, helped him with the bowl of soup, already starting to cool. Between spoonfuls, the boy let out a shy smile, one of those that quietly tear down the invisible wall between two worlds. Outside, a car door closed. A tall man in a dark suit with a tired expression crossed the street with firm, purposeful steps. His name was Caio Montero, and he was the boy's father. Caio paused at the glass door. He stood still, watching the scene unfold for several seconds that felt like minutes. His son, being gently fed by a stranger. A black woman, modestly dressed, in a small diner, doing what even he struggled to do, to see, to care, to be present. In that moment, without knowing it, Caio Montero began to lose something. The arrogance of a man who believed everything could be solved with money. And he began to gain something else in return, humility. It was one of those nights when the city seemed to carry its own sadness on its shoulders. The rain fell light but steady, painting the sidewalks with trembling reflections under the weak glow of the streetlights. Inside a nearly empty diner, Anna wiped down the counter for the third time, even though it was already clean. Sometimes, Cleaning was just a way to silence thoughts that refused to stay quiet. Her apron was stained with coffee. Her feet ached. But her gaze remained sharp. Anna had learned early on that, for a black woman like her, kindness wasn't a luxury, it was a form of resistance. A way to stay human in a world that often forgot she was. That's when she saw him. Sitting in a corner booth, a small boy struggled to lift a spoon to his mouth. His movements were slow, uncoordinated. He looked about 8, maybe 9. The wheelchair he sat in seemed too big for him, like the world still hadn't figured out how to make space for his existence. Beside him, no adult. Just a half-empty glass of juice, a powered-off tablet, and a crumpled napkin. Anna glanced around. The woman who had come in with him, elegant, white, blonde, heels clicking, stood outside on her phone, absorbed in a drama that clearly had nothing to do with the boy. Anna didn't hesitate. She grabbed a clean towel, filled a glass with water, and approached him with the quiet care of someone who knew that rushing never made anyone feel safe, especially not children like him, especially not from women like her. "Hey, champ, hungry?" The boy looked up. There was a silence in his eyes, not from shyness, but from a life of being overlooked. The kind of silence Anna recognized all too well. "I'm trying," he mumbled, as if his effort wasn't enough. Anna smiled. "How about we try together?" She sat down beside him without ceremony, helped him with the bowl of soup, already starting to cool. Between spoonfuls, the boy let out a shy smile, one of those that quietly tear down the invisible wall between two worlds, the one that gets served and the one that does the serving. Outside, a car door closed. A tall man in a dark suit with a tired expression crossed the street with firm, purposeful steps. His name was Caio Montero, and he was the boy's father. Caio paused at the glass door. He stood still, watching the scene unfold for several seconds that felt like minutes. His son, being gently fed by a stranger. A black woman, modestly dressed, in a quiet corner of the city, doing what even he struggled to do, to see, to care, to be present. And in that moment, without realizing it, Caio Montero began to lose something. The arrogance of a man who'd always believed that money could solve what presence could not. And in its place, he began to gain something else entirely. Humility. The city never truly slept, but Caio's penthouse felt like it had been asleep for years. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Perfect skyline views. Quiet rooms dressed in expensive furniture and colder silences. He stood by the glass, one hand in his pocket, the other resting on the back of his son's wheelchair. Daniel was already asleep, curled gently under a blanket. Caio wasn't sure if it was the warm food, or the warmth of being seen that had tired him out so peacefully. On the counter behind him, a wine glass sat untouched. His phone buzzed. A message from Bianca. "Dinner tomorrow with the PR team. Wear the blue suit." No, "How's Daniel?" No, "What happened earlier?" Just the kind of relationship that photographed well. Caio turned his phone over, face down. For the first time in months, he didn't feel like being managed. Instead, he thought of the waitress. Anna. He remembered her eyes. Calm. Grounded. Unshaken, even when she realized who he was. Except, that was the thing. She hadn't realized who he was. And it was the first time in years someone had looked at him. Not as a CEO, not as a wealthy man, not as a last name that opened doors. Just him. A man. A father. And maybe that's why it rattled him. The next morning, Caio didn't go to the office. He made a single call instead. "Jorge, I need you to look into someone." Quietly. A pause. "Anna Sullivan. She works the night shift at a diner on Vinton Street." No digging. Just who she is. Where she's from. He ended the call before he could second-guess himself. Later that day, Jorge called back. Her name is Anna Sullivan. 27. Lives with her grandmother and younger brother. No debt. No legal issues. No social media. She's clean, boss. Education? Public school. 1 semester of community college. Dropped out to work 2 jobs after her mom passed. Caio exhaled. He could hear it in Jorge's voice. That quiet surprise rich men sometimes had when discovering someone could be decent without wealth. As if goodness itself was unexpected in people who'd never had privilege. Anything else? Just one thing. The brother. He's disabled. Cerebral palsy. That explained it. The way she fed Daniel, without hesitation. Like she knew. Like she understood. Because she did. Caio sat back in his chair, the weight of that realization settling over him like rain on a rooftop. In a city full of polished masks and well-dressed strangers, Anna Sullivan was something he rarely encountered. Someone who helped not to be noticed. But someone who deserved to be. 3 days passed. Anna didn't see the man from the diner again, though she caught herself looking out the window more than usual. Not because she expected him to return, but because something about that moment lingered. The boy's smile. The father's silence. It sat in the back of her mind like a melody she couldn't quite forget. Life went on, the way it always did. She helped her brother with his homework before heading out for her shift. Picked up groceries. Counted her tips. Stretched every dollar like it had elastic in its bones. But something was about to change. It happened on a Tuesday. Rain again. The kind that starts soft, like it's asking permission to fall. Anna arrived early. The cook was still prepping. The booths were still empty. But taped to the inside of the door was an envelope. Thick. Cream-colored. No name. Just a red wax seal. Unbroken. She frowned, pulled it down, and opened it slowly. Inside, a single card. Some people see need. Others act. You did both. On the back, a time and an address. 10 a.m. The Holt Foundation, 48 Parkridge Avenue. She stared at it. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something else. Disbelief, maybe. Or the echo of every door that had always been locked to someone like her. She had walked by that building before. All glass and steel. Polished, corporate, and cold. A world where people wore names like shields. A world she didn't belong to. At least, not until now. She folded the card, slipped it into her coat pocket, and said nothing to anyone. The next morning, she stood outside the building in her best clothes, an ironed button-up, worn slacks, shoes that had seen better days. Still, she held her chin high. Let them look. The receptionist gave her a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Montero is expecting you. She was led into a glass elevator, up 20 floors. Her reflection followed her on every wall. Sharp, serious, too real for a place that often preferred appearances. She looked like a guest in someone else's dream. Then the doors opened. There he was. Caio Montero. By the window again, looking out over a city he practically owned. He turned as she entered and nodded once. Ms. Sullivan. Mr. Montero. Silence. Heavy. Measured. Until he finally spoke. You helped my son. You didn't ask for anything. And that tells me more about you than any resume ever could. Anna didn't move. Didn't blink. I don't understand. I want to offer you a position. Not charity. A job. A real one. Doing what? Outreach coordinator. The foundation works with children with disabilities. We need someone who understands them. Someone who sees them. Her first instinct was to laugh. Or cry. She wasn't sure which. Why me? You could hire anyone. I could. But I don't want just anyone. I want someone who doesn't treat this as work. I want someone who cares. Anna looked down at her hands. Calloused, tired, honest. Hands that had held her family together. That had fed people, cleaned tables, paid bills. Then she looked back up at the man in the perfect suit, offering her something she never expected. Not a handout. A door. A way in. But more than that, respect. She nodded slowly. I'll try not to disappoint you. Kaio gave a small, almost invisible smile. You already haven't. The glass doors hissed open like something out of a movie. Anna Sullivan stepped into the lobby of the Holt Foundation at exactly 9:58 a.m. 2 minutes early, just as she always had been at the diner. But this wasn't the diner. It smelled like lavender and fresh paper. The walls were spotless, the lighting deliberate, and the people moved like they'd been raised in spaces like this. Polished, quiet, expensive. Anna hadn't been raised in spaces like this. A young man in a tailored suit gave her a tight, rehearsed smile as he passed. Another woman glanced at her, then looked through her, kept walking, tapping on her iPad like Anna wasn't even part of the frame. Still, Anna kept her shoulders square and her gaze steady. She had faced worse than condescension, worse than being ignored. And she had a job to do. When she entered the floor assigned to community outreach, she found a gleaming desk waiting for her. On it, a plaque already engraved with her name. Anna Sullivan, Community Partnerships Coordinator. The sight of it nearly made her sit down right there on the floor. No one had ever printed her name on anything that wasn't a shift schedule or an overdue bill. Before she could take it in, a voice cut clean through the air. You must be the new hire. Anna turned. A woman in a navy suit stood in the hallway. Arms crossed. Hair sharp. Eyes sharper. Nora Winters. I run this department. Anna. Yes, I know. Mr. Montero has high hopes for you. Anna couldn't tell if it was praise, a warning, or both. Let's get one thing straight. This place doesn't hand out favors. You want to be here? Earn it. Anna met her gaze without blinking. I didn't come here for favors. Nora studied her for a moment longer, then gave a curt nod. Good. First meetings in 15 minutes. Try not to fall behind. As the woman turned and walked off, Anna sat down at her desk, not because she was tired, but because the weight of the moment had finally landed in her legs. She looked at the nameplate again, touched it, and whispered to herself, You're here now. Let them watch. But deep down, she already knew. The real test hadn't even started yet. The boardroom was colder than the rest of the building. Steel chairs. Frosted glass. A long table that looked more like a runway than a place for conversation. Anna stood just inside the doorway, watching suits shuffle papers and whisper like generals before a war. Only the battlefield was communities they'd never stepped foot in. She didn't speak. She wasn't sure she was supposed to. Kaio walked in last. Calm. Controlled. Like the room adjusted itself around him. He didn't glance at Anna. Didn't nod. But when he sat at the head of the table, he simply said, Let's begin. The meeting wasn't about community work. Not really. It was about numbers. A proposed partnership with a private contractor offering cost-effective service solutions, corporate code for slashing support to people already balancing on the edge. Anna listened as they pitched it: reduced program costs, outsourced liaisons, efficiency metrics, scalability models. They spoke fluently, the language of those who'd never had to ration insulin, skip meals to pay rent, or translate hospital forms for a parent who couldn't read them. Then, suddenly, "Ms. Sullivan, you're from the field. What do you think?" All eyes turned to her. Cold, assessing, polite, but not patient. Anna felt her palms start to sweat. She could feel Nora's gaze, sharp, waiting for her to stumble. But she didn't. She straightened her back, looked directly at the man who had asked, and responded with the same grounded clarity she'd used to serve 100 tables and survive 100 quiet battles no one ever saw. "I think numbers lie when they leave out people." A silence rippled across the table. She continued, voice steady now. "These so-called solutions don't serve communities. They dissect them. You can outsource paperwork, but you can't outsource trust." The executives shifted in their seats. Some frowned. One smirked, the kind that says you don't belong here. But Kaio didn't flinch. He watched. "The people we work with don't need scalable systems or polished slide decks. They need someone who knows their names, their stories. They need us to show up, not disappear behind a cheaper contract." Another silence. Then Nora spoke, voice cool and clipped. "That's very passionate, Ms. Sullivan. But the board deals in impact metrics." Anna didn't flinch. Then maybe it's time someone redefined what impact really means. Seconds passed. Heavy ones. Then Kaio leaned forward, fingers steepled in front of him. "She's right. The deal's off." Gasps. Tension. A dozen small, stunned recalibrations across the room. But Anna didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just sat back in her chair, heart racing, and whispered inside her chest. "You held your ground." And they listened. The hallway outside the boardroom echoed with soft clicks of expensive heels and hushed murmurs. Anna stepped out, her chest still tight, but she walked like she had walked 100 times before. Head high, like the world had no idea what it cost her to stand tall. Behind her, Nora Winters followed, tablet in hand, gaze sharp as ever. That was a bold move in there. Anna turned, choosing her words the way she always had to. Precisely. "You said to earn it." "I did." Nora didn't smile. But something in her expression flickered. A glint of respect, just shy of admission. "Don't get comfortable. That room's full of people who think one mistake is proof you don't belong." Anna nodded once, voice quiet but clear. "Let them think it. I'm not here to be comfortable." She walked away before Nora could respond. And for the first time, Nora didn't stop her. The following weeks moved fast. Anna was everywhere. Community briefings, on-site inspections, meetings with local non-profits. She talked less like an employee, more like a leader. And people began to notice. Some supported her. Others didn't. One in particular, Eric Calloway, senior executive, polished, precise, smiled too easily, watched too closely. The kind of man who called interns kiddo and women sweetheart, always with a grin that never touched his eyes. He'd been eyeing a promotion Anna's presence now threatened. And in his world, a black woman rising that fast meant one thing: she must have had help. He didn't believe in merit. He believed in control. And Anna Sullivan was starting to look like a loose thread in a very expensive suit. One afternoon, Anna returned to her desk and found a file sitting open on her screen. She hadn't left it there. It was a financial report. Internal. Sensitive. The kind of document that didn't belong in her folder, and certainly not in hers alone. She closed it fast. Checked the file path. Nothing obviously suspicious on the surface. But something in her gut twisted, the kind of twist you learn to trust when the world has taught you you're always being watched. That night, she stayed late. Backtracked her login activity. Scanned access logs. There it was, a timestamp. Her login used during an hour she wasn't even in the building. Someone had cloned her credentials. Someone was setting her up. She sat back in her chair, the quiet hum of the office pressing in around her like a warning. She didn't have proof, not yet. But she had something just as sharp. Instinct. And where she came from, instincts weren't paranoia. They were survival. Anna looked around at the office's gleaming glass walls, so clean, so transparent. But now, she was beginning to see them clearly. Glass can shine, but it also cracks. And someone inside this place wanted hers to shatter. Rewritten, the call came at 7:42 a.m. The call came at 7:42 a.m. Anna was pouring coffee in her small kitchen, dressed in slacks she had ironed the night before, already running through her morning brief in her mind. She didn't recognize the number. But when she answered, she recognized the voice. Anna, it's Nora. What's wrong? A pause. Not hesitation, calculation. You need to come in. Now. By the time Anna arrived, the building felt different. No greetings. No smiles. Just glances. Flicked her way, then quickly withdrawn, like people who already knew a version of the story, and didn't care if it was true. She was led to a conference room with glass walls and sharp edges. Inside, Nora, Eric Calloway, and at the far end of the table, Caio Montero, arms folded, expression unreadable. On the table, a folder. Her name on the cover. Nora's voice came cool. Rehearsed. Anna, we've received a report that a sensitive internal document, financial projections, was leaked to the press using your login credentials. Anna didn't sit. Didn't flinch. I didn't leak anything. Calloway leaned back in his chair, that signature smirk crawling across his face like it belonged there. Then how do you explain this? He turned the folder around. Inside, printouts, screenshots, metadata trails, all pointing to her, all planted. Anna looked to Caio. For the first time, she couldn't read him. His voice was low, slow. Tell me I wasn't wrong about you. The words hit harder than the accusation. Anna's jaw tightened. Her voice stayed low, controlled. I didn't do this. But I know someone wants me gone. Who? Calloway challenged. That's a serious claim. Anna looked at him. She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. Calloway smirked again. He already thought he'd won. Nora spoke next. Her tone was cautious now, too measured. Until this is resolved, the board has requested your suspension. Anna didn't speak right away. She closed the folder, looked up, and when she did, her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I came into this building with nothing. No title. No favors. I stood in rooms full of people who didn't think I belonged, and I proved I did. She turned to Caio. I don't need your belief. But I expected your clarity. And then she walked out. Not defeated. Not broken. Just burning. Outside, the sky had turned a stormy gray. The kind that builds slow and loud. But Anna Sullivan had weathered worse. And if they thought this was the end of her story, they'd never been more wrong. The rain came hard that night. It lashed against Anna's apartment window like it had something to say. She sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she used to count tips, clip coupons, and ration groceries like she was defusing a bomb. But this time, her hands weren't shaking. This time, she wasn't afraid. She was angry. And Anna Sullivan didn't sit still when something was broken. She fixed it, even if it wasn't hers to fix. Especially when people like her weren't supposed to have the tools to fix anything at all. She opened her laptop. Her corporate access had already been revoked, but Anna hadn't survived on blind trust. She had made backups. Notes. Dates. Emails. Every step she'd taken since day one, logged, timestamped, and stored in her own private archive. She wasn't just going to clear her name. She was going to expose the ones who tried to bury it. The first lead came from a timestamp, a document accessed under her login at a time she was across town, sitting in a meeting with 3 witnesses, a calendar entry, and a time-stamped Uber receipt. Someone had cloned her credentials. Someone inside. And she already had a pretty good idea who. But knowing wasn't enough. She needed proof. The next day, she texted the last person she ever thought she'd ask for help. Anna, I need a favor. I think someone's using me as cover. You still have access to the server logs? Nora, I'll call you in 10. They met in a small parking lot near the foundation, windows fogged by cold. Nora handed her a flash drive. Her expression unreadable, but not unfeeling. This could get both of us fired. Not if we prove the truth first. Nora exhaled, slow and heavy. You're not the first person Calloway's tried to bury. But you might be the first one smart enough to survive it. They went to work. Hours passed. Logs scanned. Headers decoded. IPs traced. Receipts cross-checked. Anna moved like someone who knew the system wasn't built for her, but had learned to read every wire in its foundation anyway. Eventually, it all pointed to a secondary login, created months ago, under a dummy account, traced to Eric Calloway. He had accessed Anna's files, forwarded her emails, drafted messages that could be turned into damning evidence, all hidden under her name. He hadn't just sabotaged her. He'd orchestrated the whole thing from day one. The final piece was a call log, tied to a journalist, routed through a burner line registered to a shell company, owned by Calloway's cousin. This wasn't just underhanded. It was surgical. By morning, Anna had everything she needed. She didn't run, didn't hide, didn't ask for permission. She walked into that building like she'd built it herself. And this time, they were going to listen. She pushed open the door to the boardroom. Inside, the vote on her termination was already underway. Kaio stood as she entered, eyes wide. But Anna wasn't looking at him. She tossed the flash drive onto the table. If you're going to ruin someone's life, at least make sure they don't know how to track metadata. Silence. Then tension. Then panic. Calloway's face went pale as Anna laid out the timeline. The forged access. The shell company. The insider trail. Every receipt. Every lie. Every step. And finally, her voice dropped low, not angry, not dramatic, just undeniable. You set up the wrong woman. Then she turned to Kaio. Not asking. Not pleading. Now what are you going to do about it? For a moment, the room didn't breathe. The board members stared at the flash drive like it might explode. Eric Calloway, always so polished, always so poised, now looked like a man who'd finally realized the noose he tied was around his own neck, and he'd pulled it tight himself. Cayo Montero hadn't said a word. He stood at the head of the table, hands braced against the wood like he was holding the weight of the room back with his own body. Then, slowly, he reached for the drive, plugged it into the console, and projected the first file onto the wall. Every log, every email, every digital breadcrumb leading directly to Calloway. It wasn't just damning. It was undeniable. When it was over, Cayo turned, and he didn't look at Anna first. He looked at Eric. "You've been with this company for 10 years. And you tried to burn it down from the inside just to block someone who outshined you in 3 months." Calloway opened his mouth, but Cayo silenced him with a look. "Effective immediately, your access is revoked. Legal action will follow. I hope your lawyer is cheaper than your pride." Security was already waiting at the door. Calloway didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't pack. He just walked out, quiet, for the first time anyone could remember. Cayo turned to the board. "Let this be clear. Anyone else who tries to weaponize this company's systems, its power, or its people for personal gain, will follow him out that door." No one spoke. They just nodded. Because Anna hadn't just defended herself, she'd exposed them, too. The culture of silence. The quiet complicity. The belief that a black woman didn't belong unless she stayed grateful, small, manageable. But Anna had refused all of that. And now, she stood tall. Not with defiance, but with authority. Her back straight. Her heart steady. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something else. Something earned. Cayo looked at her. "I should have trusted you the second you walked into that room." Anna didn't smile. "You shouldn't have needed proof." He nodded. That was fair. Then, after a pause, "You still want to work here?" She didn't hesitate. "No." Cayo blinked, caught off guard, maybe for the first time in his career. Anna stepped forward, calm, composed, unapologetically powerful. "I don't want to work for this place. I want to lead it." Silence again. But this time, it wasn't resistance. It was respect. The kind people like Anna are rarely offered, unless they take it. Cayo looked around the room, then back at her. "Then let's make it official." And just like that, the board approved her promotion. Not out of generosity, but because they understood something now. They had no choice. Anna Sullivan had earned her place not by playing their game, but by exposing it. She had walked into their world with nothing but truth and fire, and left that boardroom not as a survivor, but as a name they would never again overlook or forget. 6 months had passed since Anna Sullivan stood in that boardroom and demanded not a job, but a place at the table. Now, her name was on the office door. Vice President of Community Strategy. It wasn't just a title. It was a promise. Under Anna's leadership, the Holt Foundation began to shift. Slowly at first, then all at once. Outreach teams were rebuilt. Partnerships restructured. The language changed. The posture changed. They stopped sending press releases and started sending people. Real ones. With real stories. Programs that once lived inside spreadsheets were redesigned by voices that had always been on the margins. Social workers, single mothers, disabled veterans, youth leaders, grandmothers who'd raised entire blocks. Voices like hers. And Anna wasn't just leading it. She was living it. She walked into schools, sat in living rooms, listened more than she spoke. Because to her, power meant nothing if it didn't kneel to purpose. And if it didn't serve the people it claimed to uplift. Kaio watched it all unfold. Not from behind glass, but beside her. His walls had come down slowly. Not because Anna broke them, but because Daniel did. The boy was different now. Freer. Louder. Braver. He had someone who truly saw him. And now, so did Kaio. One afternoon, standing beside Anna before a crowd of donors, partners, and city leaders, Kaio stepped up to the microphone and made an announcement no one expected. Starting today, the Holt Foundation will operate under a new name. He turned to Anna. Nodded. The Sullivan Holt Initiative. A pause. Then murmurs. Then applause. And Anna, she didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just smiled. Quiet. Grounded. Unshakable. Behind her, Daniel beamed. Holding a ribbon with her name on it. Ready to cut it. Ready to open the doors of the first fully funded, fully accessible community center in the city. A space where no one had to earn the right to be seen. The cameras flashed. The papers wrote their headlines. But Anna didn't need the story to be told. She had already lived it. And now, she was handing that future forward. One child. One voice. One open door at a time. The rain had returned. Not the kind that rushes in with thunder and fury, but the soft kind. Familiar. Gentle. Like a memory brushing past your shoulder. Anna Sullivan stood outside a small diner on Vinton Street. The same one where it all began. Inside, the lights were low. A few late-shift workers nursed coffee. A teenager flipped through a menu, bored and half asleep. Nothing special. Nothing new. And yet, everything had changed. She stepped through the door. The bell above her gave that same tired chime from a year ago. No one looked up. No one recognized her. She liked it that way. She made her way to the booth in the corner, the one where a little boy once spilled soup and smiled through shaky hands. She slid into the seat. Ordered a tea. Outside, the city moved on. Horns. Headlights. Lives passing one another without ever touching. But inside Anna, there was stillness. Not silence. Peace. Across from her, Daniel slid into the booth. Taller now. Stronger. His legs still braced in metal, but his voice, steady. The same boy she once helped feed on a rainy night. The son of Kaio Montero. The boy who changed her life, and whose life she changed. You really used to work here? Anna smiled, sipping her tea. I didn't just work here. I survived here. Daniel looked around, eyes wide, like he was trying to hear what the walls might still remember. Do they know who you are now? Doesn't matter if they don't. He nodded, thoughtful, as if he understood exactly what she meant. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a notebook. I wrote something. For school. About you. Anna raised an eyebrow, amused. Oh yeah. Hope you didn't make me sound too nice. He grinned. I said, you were the first person who ever treated me like I wasn't broken. Anna blinked. Looked out the window. Let the moment breathe between them. Soft and sacred. Then she turned back. You're not broken, Daniel. You're just rare. He smiled again. A real one. The kind that says, I believe you. The waitress came by and refilled their cups. She didn't know who Anna was. Didn't recognize her name. Didn't need to. Just smiled politely, then moved on. And Anna thought, maybe that's the point. To live a life so rooted in purpose that it doesn't need to be explained. Only lived. Quietly. Boldly. Authentically. And so, as the rain tapped gently against the window, Anna Sullivan sat in the booth where everything had changed. Not as a hero. Not as a symbol. Just as her